Thank you for coming to our community, and thank you for the invitation to speak to you today. I'm the co-chair of the Sierra Club Comox Valley, but I'm not speaking to you in that capacity today. I'm also the owner of Enbridge Management Consultants. For the last 30 years, most of which I've lived in the Arctic, first on Baffin Island, and then in the Northwest Territories. I've worked in every community in Baffin Island and almost everyone in the Northwest Territories. I'm working in the area increasingly of self-government. My concern today is the impact of this pipeline on the loss of culture, loss of feasibility of self-government, and the loss of what is considered by most of the people I've worked with in Treaty 8 and 11 as a sacred trust, their treaty. I'd like to point out that this is not the first attack on the culture. There have been two previous efforts of the federal government. The first was a residential school system, 150,000 students over more than a century. And if their parents didn't let them go to the school, they were subject to fines and jail, this type of thing. As I look back on the 30 years of my work in the North and in the Arctic, the thing that strikes me that I will remember the rest of my life is the horror stories I've heard about what happened in the residential schools and seeing the vestiges of this going through 2 or 3 generations in terms of children grew up not knowing how to parent. The stories of children clinging to their mothers when they were sent off to school, the RCMP surrounding the community, where's truant officers, and fathers very ashamedly going into the bush because they could not say anything or do anything. In the early 90s, the early 20s, Duncan Campbell Scott, the head of Indian Affairs, had an aggressive integration policy, and the theory was put them in those schools and get the Indian out of them, and it was legal. No one spoke on behalf of the children, not the Mounties, who knew what was going on and doing it for years, not the government, and particularly not the churches. 60% of these schools were run by the Roman Catholics. I'm a former monk and Roman Catholic priest, and it's always been a great shame that nobody spoke out till Pope Benedict finally said something in the 1990s. The second attempt was by Mr. Trudeau in 1969 with his white paper. Fortunately, that died an early death. The third attempt, from my point of view, is the Enbridge pipeline. I saw something I was very, very impressed by on a video that tried to explain how this relates to culture. A young man, one of the guardians of the Great Bear Rainforest, was asked why he did this. He didn't talk about his rights. He didn't talk about the fact that they've been here longer than anybody else. He didn't talk about environment. He looked out at the interviewer and he said, "We're guarding this area because we made a promise to the land and the bears." The land is the foundation of the First Nation culture. As the Dog Rib, who I work with now, continue to say, our culture is written in our land. If you take the land away from First Nations, you take their culture away. If the federal government does this, precedent is set. It will be very easy to come in and violate the land ever again. Self-government doesn't make any sense if you've got nothing to govern, particularly in the way this is being handled. In effect, self-government and the rights of First Nations are seen as collateral damage. The special relationship, what they've seen as sacred, is being destroyed. In terms of self-government, there is no self-government. It means nothing because there's nothing to govern, and the special relationship in effect is gone. Today you can go into any First Nation and after a few conversations still see the vestiges of the residential schools. It's gone from generation to generation, and you're probably, having been through what you've been through for the last several months, have heard this time and time again. In the future, it will be the same for future generations with this pipeline. In the residential schools, the government took away the children's language and punished them for speaking. In this Enbridge situation, They're taking away the land and its species as they're downgrading all the environmental habitat protection. This will have an impact for generations to come. As I watched this, I couldn't help of a thought of something someone said many years ago that indulgently will be familiar to you. First, they came for First, they came for the children, but they were not my children, so I didn't speak out. Then they came for the land and the culture, but it was not my land and culture, so I didn't speak out. And I think the difficult question you're facing today is, this situation goes way beyond energy. It's got impacts for years to come. The question I've got is, since nobody's spoken out before when these things have come, will you tell the federal government that the First Nations are not collateral damage, that they must respect the sacred trust, and will you tell them not to destroy the culture and their chances for self-government? Thank you.